welcome to Beyond the Edge. I'm your host, Brandy Deutsch.
Hi, I'm Dee Dee Mayo, your co-host, Light, Love, and Blessings.
And today we have a special in-studio guest. Yep. It's David Vaughan.
Hello.
So glad you're back with us, David.
Yeah, we've had David on the show before. We thought we'd have him back for a fall astrological report. There's just so much happening right now. So I wanted David to come on to kind of talk a little bit about how to sort it all out and what's happening and what's going to be happening so that we can have a little bit more preparedness for what's coming. So let me introduce David. So David's an accomplished and thorough astrologist. David's gift with natal charts allows people to hear their most profound longings and their soul's mission in a very clear and compassionate way. So welcome back, David.
I'm glad to be here.
We're happy to have you. So there's a lot happening right now. I keep wanting to look at you, but I'm going to stay focused on over here, okay? So there's a lot happening right now in our world. And I feel that there's always a connection, such as the microcosm, so is the macrocosm, so is the microcosm. So I wanted to ask a few questions about what's happening in our world right now and to find out if there's a connection between what's happening celestially and how can we prepare. So the first question I have is just kind of about the present, the fall is here and I know that there's some things happening pretty soon that are coming up that we probably want to look at and be prepared for. So what can you tell us about right now?
Right now?
Yeah.
Well, in astrology, we're very aware of a thing called Mercury retrograde.
How did I know? My favorite planet. No.
Mercury goes what we call retrograde 3 times a year, and it's for 3 weeks. And Mercury astrologically stands for your thinking and the way you talk and the way you communicate and the way you hook up. And so when Mercury goes retrograde, ways that you hook up become unhooked. And so, you'll get a schedule or you'll be having a telephone call and something will disrupt that. And you're like, what's going on here? Well, it's Mercury retrograde. Ooh. So let me tell you this about Mercury retrograde. It's coming here in a couple of weeks, the end of September, and the first 3 weeks of October is when this Mercury retrograde is going to happen. And I want to give you a little astrological clue, so pay attention. This Mercury retrograde is happening in the sign of Libra. I'm a Libra. And I'm going to be paying attention, because it's going to be affecting my sun. Well, not only does it affect Libra, but it affects 3 other signs. It affects the sign opposite Libra, which is Aries. And then the other 2 signs make a square to that, Cancer and Capricorn. Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn are all going to be affected by this retrograde.
We're laughing because Dee Dee's sun sign is Aries and my sun sign is Cancer.
No, my rising moon sign is Aries. My sun
your rising is Aries. Okay.
Yeah, my rising that is so.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're Taurus.
But either way, I have already started feeling the movements of the Libras in my life, and I'm like, stop that.
So let me tell you this about those 4 signs. They're called cardinal signs.
Oh wow.
And what cardinal means is that they have the quality where they want to start something. So Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn, if something's not going on, they will stir it up.
Yes.
Cardinality. So, and the interesting thing about cardinality is that in each one of these 4 signs is when the seasons change. So we're getting ready to have our fall equinox. It's a cardinal experience. And then in December, we'll have our winter equinox. And then in the spring and in the summer, we'll once again hit those Cancer, Capricorn signs, and we will have an equinox, and we will be experiencing cardinality. It's starting a new season.
Wow.
So the day that this show is actually going to air is, I believe that is the equinox, the September 22nd. Is that
well?
Correct?
If it's not that day, that day.
So this is really timely. So
Excellent. I like the idea of starting new things. That's just my energy though. Like I like newness and fresh and what's here now. But sometimes it's hard for me to kind of follow through, because the energy kind of dwindles as time goes on a little. But what I also understand about what's happening right now is this is a year of change, is it not, David?
Yes. So that's part two.
Okay.
So the Mercury retrograde is an experience that we'll have that will be some weeks long.
Okay.
And I'll throw this in too. It happens 3 times a year. It's not like a big, huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have complications because of Mercury retrograde, just center yourself and do it again, and you'll be just fine. But other than the Mercury retrograde, we have something going on for this whole year.
Mm-hmm.
There are 3 planets out there, sort of in the middle of the solar system: Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus. And all 3 of these planets are doing something to each other this year. So let's talk about the Saturn and the Uranus and get a sense of what those planets are about. In astrology, Saturn is about sort of the old guard. It has to do with the existing structures. It has to do with what the society is deemed, this is the way we do it, and Uranus, on the other hand, is a disruptor. And it will go in and it'll say, I don't know if I like that anymore. I don't think that works for me. And so those 2 ideas of the old guard and the standard and the new rebellious sort of, we need to check this, those things all year are going to be having issues with each other. And so this is really interesting to me. So those are just the theory of astrology, that the concept of Saturn and everything responsible in our government and the things we trust, is an idea. And Uranus has this idea that we're going to test the old guard. That's just astrology theory. But what happens to us in the collective is that we will pick a side and we will identify with that, and so there's a group of people that have identified with the Saturn, and they're like, this is what's always worked, we're okay with this, I don't want to worry about it. Then there's another group of people that have, responded to and self-identified with the Uranus. And they're like, man, I don't like any of this stuff. We need to change this up. And there's just this radical sense of Uranus, And so I watch myself. I sort of try to identify with both schools of thought,
Mm-hmm.
But I see in my life, in the personal friends I have, everyone's deciding which side to pick it on, and they think it's coming straight for themselves. And in a sense, it is. But there's this bigger thing going on that is affecting all of us.
Well, yeah, for those that do, that feel that, because there is the old school, there is the old way of thinking, and while the principle of it is good, it hasn't always worked. So the Uranus is coming in and shaking that up. It's like, what point in time do you see where the planets may allow something like the calming effect of that, where it's going to be, we don't have to necessarily choose sides.
Well, this astrological confrontation started in January,
mm-hmm.
and it's and the planets, because of retrograde motion, go back and forth, and they keep running across each other, and they're going to run across each other all year.
Mm.
But in December, at the end of December, they're going to get away from each other.
Okay.
And whatever this has been going on for this year, that part of it will, after December, we'll feel something totally shift. We'll do the next thing.
I like that.
I know.
But this year has been a little. It's just, I'm flabbergasted by all the stuff that's getting, and I don't even have words, because it's not that it's not normal. It's just bizarre. Okay. I don't even know what, and it's just craziness. And it's kind of like people are unsettled, and things that were never even remotely acceptable. I mean, they would have sent out paddy wagons for half the people that act the way they do now. I'm like, what is going on? What we used to identify as crazy or abnormal behavior is, I mean, I don't even know. I don't have words. I'm really and truly just sitting back going, holy crap. How do you process this? How do you?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's a good position to have, like to take a step back and to be the observer of what's happening instead of being involved and so emotionally invested.
Right.
Because, what Dave is talking about is like, yeah, this is just what is. This is what's happening in the world. How we respond to it is truly up to us and our responsibility, as he puts it. And I would agree with that 100%. And I think a really good posture to take is to kind of look, kind of set back daily and go, okay, let's just take a look at what's going on. Let me detach my emotions from what's happening, because it's the emotions that get things escalated really.
Right. Well, it's like somebody is literally, and several somebodies are literally going with a fishing hook, throwing it out there, and seeing who they can catch with bait, and bring them in. And I'm like, whoa, I ain't even going to be in the pond. I'm going to, forget it. I'm not swimming. I'm not going to get fooled by that, because it's just too bizarre. And someone has to stay outside that chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, how else will the world and people recover? Because they're going to need us to, and we'll be wore out if we try to stay in there with them. We'll drown.
Agreed. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm wondering, something else you said that kind of caught my attention just energetically. You said, things are kind of coming to light that never really did before. I think there's this big reveal, this unearthing of information and of truth, actually, in a lot of ways, that I think is also probably a result of these things happening. What do you think, David?
Well, there's yet a third thing happening.
Okay.
And that's the truth part.
Okay.
So are we ready to do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's yet another transit going on, and it doesn't have anything to do with the month or the year. It has to do with the decade.
Oh, wow.
I find that interesting. So everybody has a chart. And so not only do people have charts, but our country has a chart. So the United States has a chart, July the 4th, 1776, and so that chart is an active psychological construct, and so in astrology, when planets go around and activate that old-timey chart that we have, then things happen in our country. Well, something very special is happening in our country this decade. There's one planet, the one the furthest out there, Pluto. Pluto takes 250 years to go all the way around. Well, guess what? Time's up. Pluto has come back, and what we are having, astrologically, we call it a Pluto return. And the Pluto return, when we're talking about a 250-year cycle, is not something that just happens on a day or even a year. It's sort of a time period. And I consider that time period sort of like this decade.
Yeah.
And so our Pluto is in the sign of Capricorn, 27 Capricorn, late degree of Capricorn. So when Pluto, on its trip around, like when it got to 240 years, it came into the sign of Capricorn for the first time in 250 years. When it came into Capricorn in 2008, we had a financial crisis like we've never had since the Great Depression. And that kicked off for our country the Pluto return. And like you were saying, Pluto sort of esoterically has to do with truth. And when Pluto is active in a chart, then what happens is the truth comes to the surface. And
So-
everybody sees that, like in this case, the financial institutions were like not quite all together. You know, we saw that truth and had to respond to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was this decade that the people that, deal with the stars and the planets and everything and put information out there for the world, they decided that Pluto was not a planet. Wasn't it in this decade?
Astrologers didn't decide that.
Okay. Well, but what I'm saying is they tried to cast it out. So I'm wondering, was that they're trying to just totally ignore truth arriving, to hide from it, to shield it, to maybe even change the tide of it being seen and recognized for the times change. So it's very interesting how that happened just right in this
does, and the people that made the change are scientists, and they were just on their own track.
Okay.
I don't think they had an intention. But it's interesting that them just doing their own little thing sort of came up and sort of spoke to the truth that you were wondering about.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's interesting.
That's right. I really think that science is changing,
Mm-hmm.
right? I really think science itself is changing the way that we look at it, the way we approach it, the way that we've kind of held it on high, I would say, for a long time. And I'm envisioning a future where we include quantum physics and quantum mechanics and all of what we do and what we interact with, because it's a huge, in our world, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge part. I say our, me and Dee Dee's, right? And yours. It's a huge of how we interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my vision and my hope that we can start to include a bigger kind of science in a way that includes us all, that includes all beings, not just on the planet, but in the universe. And so, because science works differently in different parts of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exciting to me. I mean, we're talking about fear, and we're, a lot of people have, talking about change. That was a slip. We're talking about change. And I think that raises a lot of fear in people, but that doesn't have to necessarily be how we look at it. We could see it as exciting. A lot of times I think fear and excitement get a little confused because we're just there's so much uncertainty around it.
Well, it's like you were talking about earlier. There is the thing, we're having a Pluto return. Things are going to change. It's our business to have an appropriate response to that. And how you tell if you're having an appropriate response to something is, are you having a good time?
That's pretty simple, isn't it?
Simple.
That's pretty simple.
Wow.
You are, if it stresses you out and you're like, if it is not fun, then you're doing something wrong.
Okay. Well, that's good. That'll be my checkpoint. Am I having a good time? Nope. I'm out of here. And whoever's involved in that is out of here. That's great.
There's something interesting also about this Pluto return.
Mm-hmm.
Most Western civilizations live for 500 years or so. The Greeks, the Romans, and
Oh, okay. I'm like, what?
And so that's 2 Pluto returns. We're having our first Pluto return. We're just babies. We're only 250 years old. Most countries are hundreds and thousands of years old. And so there was one civilization, the Incas, back, I guess, in the 1500s. They were prosperous. They were kicking butt. They were just an amazing South American culture, and they were having their first Pluto return. They were 250 years old, and the Spanish showed up, gave them all diseases, and they died. Wow. Their culture only made one Pluto return.
Wow. Changed everything.
So that really, Pluto will change on a drastic level.
Right.
Wow.
So if you want to look at that from our country's point of view, we have an opportunity as a collective to participate here and make our change something wonderful and great. But it's not necessarily so.
Right. I mean, you're saying truth, but what I'm also hearing and what I know about Pluto is it brings out the shadow.
That's right.
Right.
And that's part of truth.
Yes. And if we're not doing our own shadow work, if we're not looking at the dark side of who we are and what how we came to be here, not only as a country, but just ourselves. Like, I think that it's going to be a struggle, right? Instead of something that we can approach with ease and grace when we allow the shadow to come through and to look at it and acknowledge it and say, yeah, we were part of this. We did this. And now acknowledging it and forgiving ourselves, forgiving each other, coming together. I think that's the key to what it's going to look like in the next stage of development. That's just my opinion. That's just what I'm thinking. So that's very interesting. Is there anything else that's happening right now that we need to bring to light around this? That's about it.
Mercury retrograde.
Mercury.
It's going to happen. It's going to start, and it's already affecting me. Right. It's going to kick off the end of the month.
Okay.
And then 3 weeks in October. Like I said, if something breaks down, don't get unraveled. Just do it again. It's sort of like it's raining outside. Just take an umbrella.
Take your umbrella.
Yeah, is it do it again, or just don't do it until after? Or don't do it at all. I mean, sometimes it's a don't do it at all. I mean, how would you test that?
Well, the don't do it at all. If you understand Mercury retrograde is coming up and you have that foreknowledge, which is what we're offering right now, you will have an opportunity to, change your behavior and be careful, during the first weeks of October.
Or reschedule or recognize when things aren't moving in the path that you'd like them to go, and then just kind of rearrange or recollect.
I have to keep saying this. Mercury retrograde is not a huge transit. It happens 3 times a year. The collective is kind of used to the ebb and flow of Mercury retrograde. Yeah. But I'll say this, I would never buy a house with Mercury retrograde. I mean, those big life things, you need to pay attention to in Mercury retrograde.
While this is serious, what came to me, David, is that the guy that wrote Murphy's Law had to have been experiencing Mercury retrograde at its best.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He was he's like, what? And it was all pinned out. And I bet if we went back when that was written, we could probably prove it.
So just to recap, the next thing we talked about was something that's going on all year.
Right.
Planet Saturn, which has to do with the established way of thinking, and the planet Uranus, which has to do with challenging whatever is established. Those 2 planets are at odds with each other. And it started in January, and it will last all the way through December. And we're seeing it in our collective every day. There's a group of people who have self-identified with the standard, the old guard, the way everything's always been. And there's a group of people that have self-identified with the rebellious Uranian thing. And so we as a collective are acting out this transit in a very personal sort of way.
It's very,
And it's really upsetting to me, because people are so self-identified, they just feel like their life depends upon making their point of view understood.
Right.
And in that dogma, I guess, they hurt people, there's dissension with people, and so that.
Well, and then I want to just add, I think there's another group who, like what I said, kind of stands back and goes, oh, wow, look at what's happening. Don't want to self-identify with those ideals and those old or the new thing that's coming, but instead step back and I like to identify as a spirit, as a collective. And I think if that catches on and more people realize that, then when it's over,
it's like, I totally agree, because the real deal is if we can look back and say, okay, that's the way it's always been. And what are the possibilities of how we can alter this and make it even better? That's sort of the best that could happen at the conference.
Yeah, that's what I think several shows when, Brandy and I, we talk, and I'm like, there has to be a solution that's not either of those. There has to be something. It just hasn't come to light for people to start hearing it. So the ones of us that are sitting back and we're warring in a different way. We're waiting on the time to present, the reality that's easier to people and that be heard. And that's what I'm excited to see, as the end of the year comes and we get ready to get out of this mess. I'm like, whoo.
It's coming. It's been culminating. Yeah. There's a lot of, conscious networks that I kind of am a part of that they're doing this. They're like, don't self-identify, come out of it, look at it differently, stay true to your own values in terms of we are a collective. And even though there are these things happening, the warring factions right now, like we know where our center is.
Yes.
And we are I don't even want to say spiritual. It's just a oneness, right? We're the oneness. There is no sides. There are no sides, and I think that's going to kind of cream rises to the top, right? Yes. I think that's what's going to rise to the top as the end of the year starts to unfold and people start to realize, oh, wait a minute, we really are one. We are one collective.
Then the last thing we were talking about was the Pluto return. And in my way of understanding the Pluto return, it kicked off when Pluto first entered the sign of Capricorn since 250 years, and that was in 2008, and that started a huge change in our country. And that influence is going to happen for a few more years. And so here we are at a time when civilizations, get a chance to look at themselves and get to align themselves for their next 250 years.
Wow.
So I think it's our job to disassociate from one way or another and look at the bigger picture and say, what do we want to do for the next 250 years?
Yeah.
And make a conscious decision to go a direction.
Excellent. That's a great summary, David. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for the reading. Now, if people want to have a reading with you, like a private reading, how can they reach you?
Well, I've got an email address, and it may be on the screen here in a minute.
It is.
I have a telephone number too.
Oh, okay.
I can put that.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
713-256-1603.
256-1603?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the best way to find me.
Perfect. And your email address is davidlloydvaughan@gmail.com. And Vaughan is VAUGHAN.
That's right.
Okay.
But that phone number.
That phone number is good too. Okay, excellent. Wonderful, wonderful. So thank you so much. I love your readings because they're not like predictions. Some people, some astrologers, they're into prediction and things like that. I think nothing is set in stone. I think anything is pretty much changeable. And I love the way you present the information and that this is what's happening. And then however you respond to it. Every now and then David will send me a text and say, hey, just so you know, like something's in Mars right now and you might be a little pissy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ever since he did my reading and explained some things that, I was like, what is going, I always had this inner, what is this? And he, put name and address to it, so to speak, and and showed me, it helps you understand so that you can transcend the things that are not necessarily exactly the way you want them based on your astrological chart.
So helpful. It's so helpful.
Yeah.
To, like you said, just identify and say, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah.
That's not me. I'm not crazy.
Yeah, no. Why does this keep happening? Well, okay.
I'm actually the sane one.
Yeah.
So this is great. I want to encourage you guys to check out David and give him a call or an email if you're interested in a reading with him. He'll just be happy to have a conversation with you and say, well, this is what a reading is like, and just to see what's happening, right? Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show today, David. And if you know someone who needs some prayers or light sent their way, they're having a difficult time with all of this, you can offer them to be on our light intercession list. And you can do that by texting their name to 805-500-3343 or message us at Beyond the Edge TV. Our web address, we're getting that going, but you can also, can they contact us through that way too?
Yes, on the web address. It's beyondtheedgeproductions.com.
There you go. So thank you so much. We're out of time already. I know. It goes by so fast.
Bye. Bye.
So on behalf of David, thank you again for being here. It was great to have you on again. And I wish you a long life and vibrant health. Namaste, y'all.
Bye-bye.